How do you explain Brexit to the world? She says it will be stable and orderly, but G20 leaders warned Theresa May of economic realities. As world leaders watch China's projection of power, will they be convinced the UK is still open for business? Good evening. It's Theresa May's first World Summit and her first trip to China. She admits Britain may face difficult times ahead, and already the Prime Minister's under pressure on the world stage, with the US saying it will prioritise negotiations with the EU before the UK, and Japan warning of drastic changes after Brexit. Also tonight, the Labour MP Keith Vaz looks set to step down as chair of Parliament's Home Affairs Select Committee after a tabloid sting involving male prostitutes. She shamed world leaders for the crimes of poverty they themselves created, says Pope Francis, as he declares Mother Teresa a saint.
I am Shakespeare with great hair. I'll probably be the next Wayne Hector in 8 years.
And it's the voice of a generation, angry, unapologetic, full of despair, but also hope. We'll be talking grime with one of its biggest artists, Wretch 32, and the author of a new book charting the genre's influence. Theresa May has completed her first day of international summitry as Prime Minister. She took her place with other leaders from the G20 countries at the summit in the Chinese city of Hangzhou. She told them that Brexit would be stable and orderly, but Japan has already spelled out its worries to Downing Street. Mrs May also had her first face-to-face meeting with Barack Obama and with President Putin, telling him there were still serious areas of concern in the relationship between Britain and Russia. Our political editor Gary Gibbon reports from Hangzhou.
It's her first ever trip to China, her first major summit, and Theresa May has to convince the G20 that Brexit won't be the danger to the world economy the G20 warned of earlier this year. Adding to the drama, the Prime Minister will sit down for separate talks with President Xi tomorrow. Also in the room will be her top advisor, Nick Timothy. He's said he thinks the previous government's deal with China on nuclear energy leaves Britain wide open to security threats. China's warned Theresa May that Chinese investment in other British infrastructure could be affected if Britain doesn't go ahead with the commitment to let China design and build a nuclear power station in Essex. At the first roundtable session of talks, Theresa May told leaders that Brexit would be a stable and orderly process. As she was speaking, details emerged of demands by Japan, Prime Minister Abe in the yellow tie here, spelling out that country's deep concerns about Japanese investments in the UK. The 15-page document delivered to Downing Street last week argues that Japanese employers in the UK need access to Europe's single market. If Theresa May went for controls on freedom of movement, Europe might not give that access. Number 10 said that Theresa May was the hot ticket at the G20, leaders queuing up to see her. They also said that when she met President Putin and he raised the possibility of restoring relations with the United Kingdom, she pushed back.
There will be some differences between us. There are some complex and serious areas of concern and issues to discuss. I hope we will be able to have a frank and open relationship and dialogue.
President Putin, like everyone else in the room here, is wondering who will be representing the US at the next G20. President Trump would make Brexit look like a minor irritant. In her first face-to-face meeting of the summit, Theresa May met the current occupant of the White House. President Obama was asked if he stood by his pre-referendum warning that Britain, if it voted for Brexit, would be at the back of the queue for trade talks with the US. He said talks with the EU, known as TTIP, would take priority.
First things first. And the first task is going to be figuring out what Brexit means with respect to Europe. And our first task is making sure that we get first TPP done, but also that we move forward on the TTIP negotiations, in which we've already invested a lot of time and effort.
We have a very strong trading relationship with the United States, and we will be looking to ensure that we can maintain that strongest possible relationship into the future.
The Chinese government has left nothing to chance here. Security men are everywhere. Media travel is heavily restricted. Much of the local population has been sent out of town to make this ancient city a spotless showcase for China's centuries-delayed return to top-dog economic status. Gary Gibbon, Channel 4 News, Hangzhou.
And here are some of the images China has been offering the G20 and the world tonight. Delegates have been enjoying a gala performance of Swan Lake, with appearing and disappearing dancers performing on the lake near the conference centre, followed by a spectacular fountain and fireworks display. Now, the Labour MP Keith Vaz looks set to stand down as chairman of the influential Home Affairs Select Committee, following reports in today's Sunday Mirror newspaper linking him with male prostitutes. Ed Hauke has been following this story. So, Ed, tell us what's happened.
Well, so Keith Vaz is chairman of the Home Affairs Select Committee. That's the parliamentary body that oversees the police. And he's been the victim of a classic tabloid sting in which the Sunday Mirror newspaper caught him using an assumed or false identity with male escorts, calling himself Jim and explaining that he was a washing machine salesman. Mr. Vaz entertained Eastern European escorts at one of his London properties and apparently, according to the paper, paid for their entertainment using a charity that he founded. Well, so you may say that Mr. Vaz is nothing if not consistent. It's just 2 months, I think, since the Home Affairs Select Committee passed a report in which it recommended that people who pay sex workers shouldn't be prosecuted. He's obviously made a statement today saying that it's deeply disturbing that a national newspaper should have paid individuals to have acted in this way. I have referred these allegations to my solicitor, who will consider them carefully and advise me accordingly.
Ed, thanks very much. Now, more than 100,000 people have crammed into St. Peter's Square in Rome to witness the canonisation of Mother Teresa of Calcutta. Pope Francis proclaimed her a saint during a ceremony and mass at the Vatican. Diana Magne reports.
She was already a saint for so many. Now Mother Teresa officially joins the celestial choir invisible, the heavenly ranks of the canonized who, according to Catholic doctrine, can work miracles in God's name.
Beatam Teresiam de Calcutta, Santam es.
We declare and define Blessed Teresa of Calcutta to be a saint, and we enroll her among the saints, decreeing that she is to be venerated as such by the whole Church.
In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen.
The diminutive nun, dubbed the Saint of the Gutters for her work with the poor and destitute, fast-tracked to sainthood by Pope John Paul II, who beatified her in 2003 after the Church declared a first miracle, the healing of an Indian woman from stomach cancer. Now canonized by Pope Francis after miracle number 2. A Brazilian man who says his brain abscesses vanished after he prayed to Mother Teresa.
We have people who have nothing, who are wanted by no one, who have become a burden to the society, who have forgotten what is love, what is human touch. And for us, they are the children of God.
Of Albanian origin, Mother Teresa moved to Calcutta in 1946, where she founded the Missionaries of Charity. For all her attention to the poor, she was ultra-orthodox in her views, calling abortion the greatest destroyer of peace when she accepted the Nobel Peace Prize. She was also called out for soliciting funds from questionable sources and failing to ease suffering, which she saw as a Christian virtue. Chief amongst her critics, the polemicist and atheist Christopher Hitchens, who described her as Hell's Angel.
She was a fanatic and a fundamentalist and a fraud. I think probably the most successful confidence trickster of the last century, and responsible for innumerable deaths and for untold suffering and misery, and proud of it.
But clearly there are plenty within the Catholic Church and beyond who are proud of her, who believe through this elaborate ceremony that Saint Teresa may now dispense God's grace and humility from on high.
Well, as Theresa May explains Brexit to world leaders at the G20 in China, here the party that helped bring it about, UKIP, is less than a fortnight away from electing a leader to succeed Nigel Farage. There are 5 candidates for the leadership, but the front-runner, Diane James, has controversially declined to take part in hustings with her rivals. Porrick O'Brien has been to one of her public meetings in Gloucester today to ask her why.
Grassroots UKIP politics. Nothing if not red raw.
Hello, my lovely. I've got peri-peri chicken, bratwurst sausages.
Diane James, the bookies' favourite for next UKIP leader, chows down with the faithful in Gloucester.
Do you believe Theresa May when she says Brexit means Brexit?
No, I don't. If Brexit really meant Brexit, to use her words, she would have invoked Article 50 by now, or she would have launched a mechanism to repeal the European Communities Act.
Politically, she can't afford for it not to happen, can she?
Well,
it'd be political suicide, wouldn't it?
Yes, but remember, she's still leader of a party that is fundamentally split on the whole Europe issue. She's still in charge of a party and a government, and she's up against an opposition which is collectively against ignoring the referendum outcome.
Yeah, but she's Prime Minister of a country who
yes,
mainly voted
but yep, and you know that's exactly the point. She's Prime Minister of the country. Why hasn't she listened to the referendum outcome? Why hasn't she undertaken what is required to give that confidence back in terms of a democratic vote and invoked Article 50?
So when would you invoke it if you were in charge?
If I was in charge, I would invoke it within weeks of Parliament coming back after the summer recess.
She's decided not to attend UKIP leadership hustings events. For her, they represent old-school pantomime politics.
I didn't feel that it was going to address what the membership actually wanted, which was quality time, quality interaction with the candidates themselves.
It leaves you open to allegations, of course, of being a coward.
Well, that's an interesting one.
But doesn't it, from people who, because you've decided to opt out?
No, I haven't decided to. Well, first of all, I'm quite amused at the idea of being a coward. You know, to actually put in place my own programme.
No, but you know what I mean, to face the music in a hosting, eye to eye with the contender.
I'm sorry, I just don't have any truck with the comment about being a coward.
After the administrative cock-up that left Stephen Wolfe out in the wilderness, Diane James is seen as the Farage anointed. So, what of him?
Possibly something along the lines of an international ambassador in terms of referendum issues. We know already that a number of other European Union member states are signalling very, very quickly and adroitly that they want their own referendums.
Oh, sorry, just to be clear, would you like to see him leading the negotiations around Brexit?
I would.
If you were in charge?
Yes, I would.
The challenge now, name recognition like the one before.
Thank you very much. Wunderbar. Let's find out who everyone is now.
Now, some news just in. Syrian government forces are reported to have recaptured areas in southwestern Aleppo, putting some rebel-held parts of the city back under siege. The advance saw pro-Assad forces recapture ground they'd lost last month, including the city's weapons academy and Air Force Technical College. Almost 2,000 people have attended the funerals of the 5 young friends who were drowned off Camber Sands in East Sussex late last month. The family say Hindu ceremonies are normally private, but they chose to hold the funeral in the presence of the media on Plumstead Common in south-east London because of the numbers attending and to spell out the message of the need for safety measures on the beach.
These 5 men were from a friendship group and they worked in similar places, so opening it up to as many people as we can just so they can get to see them one last time and pay their respects and get together with family and say their condolences. It was important for us to open it up, but also because of the fact that there's a more national issue out there, that there are no lifeguards at Camber Sands, and the family and friends were very set on the fact that this cannot happen again.
Sport now, and Andy Murray has made it through to the fourth round of the US Open. He joins fellow Brits Johanna Konta and Kyle Edmund in the last 16. Edmund plays later this evening, while Konta is currently one set down in her fourth round match. But another Briton, Dan Evans, failed to make it through after a 5-set thriller yesterday. Kieran Mudley reports.
Just 1 year ago, Dan Evans was ranked 333rd in the world. But what a difference 12 months can make.
Awful timing for Wawrinka.
Facing world number 3 Stan Wawrinka, the 26-year-old came just 1 point from victory. In the fourth set tiebreak, Evans had match point, but the Swiss saved it and went on to take the set and then the match.
A clinical finish.
Things were meant to be more straightforward for Andy Murray, with the world number 2 facing the unseeded 34-year-old Paolo Lorenzi. But Murray dropped his first set of the tournament before comfortably seeing off the Italian over 4 sets.
That'll do it.
Murray later admitted he had to win ugly to make it through to face Grigor Dimitrov in the next round. Murray now joins Kyle Edmund in the last 16, the first time 2 British men have made this round of the US Open for 50 years.
Formula One and Nico Rosberg has won the Italian Grand Prix to cut Lewis Hamilton's championship lead to just 2 points. Hamilton began the race in pole position, but a poor start allowed Rosberg to snatch first place from his rival. The German driver controlled the race to claim the checkered flag, with Hamilton finishing second. Now, after the break, it's the musical genre born out of inner-city London that's having a huge impact both nationally and internationally.
I waited a lifetime just to end up in the limelight. I write rhymes so they won't consider me an Einstein, while they was nominated for a Grammy for the night.
As a new book is published on the history and nature of the grime phenomenon, we speak to one of its top performers, Wretch 32. Now, grime as a music force started emerging in inner-city London over a decade ago. It's since spread far and wide across much of the country, and despite being snubbed at the Brit Awards this year, it's making waves internationally. And not before time. Its significance has now been documented in a new book, This Is Grime. In a moment, we'll be hearing from the author and one of the genre's biggest stars, Wretch 32. But first, why is 2016 Grime's year?
Winning the Mercury Music Prize back in 2003 cemented Dizzy Rascal as one of the names in grime. As the genre evolved, it was difficult to define, growing as it had out of the UK garage sound, jungle, electronic music and hip-hop. Commercial success wasn't quick, but out of the limelight, its influence grew as it spread into cities like Birmingham, Manchester and Bristol, eventually garnering recognition and awards. The MC Big Nasty has talked of a music establishment bias against grime, putting it down to race and taste issues.
It's a bit of both. Remember, you know, for time, people thought the grime scene was just violent, aggressive, street kids, drug dealers and gangsters. I put on 2 tours independently. Not one problem. Fully grime, yeah, no issues.
The winner of the Best Grime Match 2014, Stormzy!
For other artists like Stormzy, whose track Shut Up pushed barriers to reach number 8 in the UK singles chart last year, grime is about politics, but also about communicating and a way of life.
Can you be better than me?
Usually one man in the crew with like flipping hundreds of grime instrumentals on his phone, and then someone would just play a beat, and wherever you was, chilling in your brethren's yard, chilling on the estate, yeah, like you would just get the phone out and everyone would spit.
Your friends inside, money on camera, yeah?
Although recent years have seen the rebirth of grime influenced by American drill music, which may have helped its recognition internationally, its underground origins were often political.
Just another race, in a race with the race.
Wretch 32, the Tottenham rapper Jermaine Sinclair, references the Mark Duggan campaign, as well as racial profiling in the UK.
Well, I'm joined now by the author of This Is Grime, Hattie Collins, and Wretch 32. Wretch, can I turn to you first? What do you think grime means today, and how's it changed from the early 2000s when it first emerged?
I think now it's expression, man. I think people are being able to express themselves, talk about their lifestyle, talk about where they want to get to. And I think one of the main factors that definitely have changed is when I was coming through, it was just pirate radio, and that's as big as it gets. But now, like the new kids, if you're 14, 15, 16, you can see acts like Stormzy or Skepta selling out big venues, you know, doing festival stages and stuff like that. So I think now, you know, the dream is alive for people to know that it can really take you somewhere else.
And Hattie, having spoken to all of these people who really founded a genre, what would you say is the one line that really sums it up?
Well, there's a line by the MC Skepta who says, "This ain't a culture, it's my religion," which he says in one of his tracks from last year. And I think it's really true. I think the essence of the book, what comes through from reading the book, is that this isn't just a genre of music that emerged from East London in 2002. This is a way of life for lots of people. It's a lifestyle, it's a culture, and yeah, it's become pretty much a religion to many people.
So, Rach, we're sort of saying 2016 is the year of grime, it's all really blown up. Is there a danger, though, that you sort of have a disconnect from the roots? And I'm thinking the word sellout.
Nah, because I think everyone knows who's genuine to the genre, and everyone's seen everyone's growth. And I think people are now just happy to see that people are getting, you know, top 10 albums and, you know, going to #1 on iTunes and doing the festivals. I think people are happy to see it in a bigger place because they've been to the venues where it was smaller, there was only 100 capacity, and the dream was to see it, you know, kind of fulfill its potential, and now it is. I think everyone's happy for the artist.
So the dream's a reality almost?
Yeah, yeah.
Now, back in 2006, David Cameron criticised the BBC for playing grime music, and he said that it encouraged gun and knife culture. Do you think there was anything valid about that, Hattie?
No, I don't. I think lots of the MCs from the grime scene are actually incredible role models, artists like Wretch. They are the people that communicate and explain the situations and the circumstances that they've been born into, and they have been able to overcome those in lots of cases. So people like Wretch, I think, are really great role models. I think politicians should be engaging with artists like Stormzy, Skepta, Wretch, to try and understand and to communicate with younger people better and engage them both in politics and looking at a different way of living, because often these kids are, you know, confined to very, very poor socio-economic situations with little potential, little hope for the future. So I don't think it was correct at all.
Wretch, how did you feel about those comments? Because Bizzle pushed back, calling Cameron a donut, didn't he?
Yeah, I think it's easy to point the finger at things that you don't understand. And at the end of the day, you have to understand that this is entertainment. I grew up watching Freddy Krueger. I don't have a stripy jumper and a handful of clothes. Do you know what I mean? I took that as entertainment. We're making records, you know, about our journey in life. And of course, we have seen or been through negative things. It doesn't mean that it's negative. We're speaking about it, so you don't have to go through anything that someone else has been through.
I mean, you're quite politically involved yourself. You recently went on a Black Lives Matter march.
Yeah.
What do you think are the issues really facing young black people in Britain today?
I think, you know, the obvious issues with police, and I think.
And when you say obvious issues with police, just spell it out. What do you mean exactly?
I mean, profiling. You know, being stopped more than everybody else, like police surrounding estates like Tottenham or Brixton or South London or North London or East London. And I definitely, what I do love is that the kids now have a way out, because before there wasn't much you could do to better your circumstances. And I think now with music, it's allowed us to have hope. So I definitely don't think people should be throwing shade on it.
It's really important if you look at artists like Novelist and Stormzy as well, and Wretch, who are really engaged with politics. They're going out on Black Lives Matters marches, they're writing on Instagram, and they're using their platform as a form for change and conversation. And, you know, we can't ignore these things. They should be discussed.
One of the things people might criticise about grime is that as much as it does offer some kids a way off the streets and into the studios, for every one that makes it, there are loads that don't. So is there a sense of false hope?
Not at all. I think one of the reasons I wanted to do this book was to shine a light not only on the MCs and the producers and the DJs, but also the people that surround the scene, so the managers, the artists, the journalists, the photographers. So you may be a young kid who perhaps isn't going to make it as an MC, but you may end up working along Wretch's team as a radio plugger or a producer. There's so many different avenues. There's so many young people doing brilliant things today. young entrepreneurs like Jamal Edwards from SBTV, which people know plenty about. So grime MCs aren't saying this is the only route you can take. It's one of many.
So hold that thought. We're going to come back to this. For the moment, we will carry on this conversation live on Channel 4 News' Facebook page. So join us there right now. But for this programme, we're back tomorrow at 7. Have a very good evening.